nominate you?
When I decided to run, and I mentioned this on a podcast the other day, everybody always asks me what tempted me to run. Why did I decide to run? And you know what? I could probably give 100 answers and they'd all be true, because there's so many reasons I decided to run. And it was just a matter of what pushed me over that edge. I mean, because there was a lot of reasons, but I mean, it really comes down to the two-party system is tearing our country apart. And I feel we have to do something. We have to try to fix that, because the parties' loyalty is towards the parties, not the country. I grew up as a Republican. Really the only Democrat I had previously voted for was a guy named Billy Tozan. He was a blue dog down in Louisiana when I was down there. I was a big fan of Ronald Reagan back in my neocon days. But I've always been Republican. And then finally in 2016, we got to the point where I couldn't support that party anymore. I mean, they completely forgot about, being fiscally conservative. They were, turning into big government. They were very restrictive. I mean, the Patriot Act just seemed to grow every legislation period, and I just did not feel I could support that party anymore. And what happened with the Republican Party is they left their base. They left political orphans, and I feel like I was one of those political orphans. And at that point, I started looking around at parties and going, hey, you know what, I can't stick with the Republican Party. I mean, I don't stand for what they stand for anymore. I have very little in common with the Democratic Party, so that party was obviously not a fix. And the Libertarian Party came in to be the closest to what I was looking for, what I was used to, what the Republican Party used to be. It was all about the freedoms that I cared about. I mean, I traveled the last 10 years of my military career all over the world. I mean, I saw how other governments ran. I saw how the restrictions were placed on their people. I mean, when I was in Amman, Jordan, I mean, you basically went through a metal detector and sometimes a pat down just to go into the mall. I mean, that's how they were used to, that was nothing for them. That was what they were used to. And I felt that's kind of almost to the point where we were heading. So that's one of the reasons I decided to leave the Republican Party. But you know, at that time, I still wasn't looking at running. It was more along the lines of seeing what was going on, seeing the writing on the walls, and no, I couldn't really support either party in 2016 who had those particular candidates. I mean, the fact that those were the candidates that those parties thought represented them really drove the point home to me that, you know, I don't have a place in these parties anymore. So I retired in 2018 to my farm, and I said, you know what, I'm done. I'm going to come out here, I'm going to run my farm, I'm going to retire and do this. Well, about a year into that, I needed to build a horse shed, or a run-in shed for my cattle. And I had to go to get a permit. So I went in to do what I had to do for a permit, and this is Minnesota. We get a lot of snow, we get a lot of mud. I wanted this shelter near the road so that I can get hay in there and use it to store hay in the fall and stuff like that, without having to go through mud and worry about snow later in the year. So I go into the zoning office, and they tell me that between the set-aside and the right-of-way, I cannot build 150 feet from the road. This is a wide gravel road. Why did they need 150 feet? So I went later into a council meeting, county commissioners, say, hey, why do you need this room? Why do you need all this space? Well, first they tried to punt it off and go, oh, you got to talk to zoning. I said, no, you guys are the ones who signed the zoning regulations. The buck stops here. Don't try to kick it anywhere else. Why? If you could tell me why you need 150 feet of my property that I can't build on, give me a reason. If you give me a reason, you know what? I'll walk out of here. You won't see me again. About 20 minutes later, they still hadn't come up with a reason. And one of them finally came back and said, well, we may want to change that to a 4-lane someday. It's a dirt freaking gravel road, okay? I call bullshit. And it pissed me off enough to go, you know what? And they said, well, you can go through this procedure and that procedure and blah, 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 to try to change these zoning regulations. And I looked at my face, yeah, you know, there's another option. What's that? To replace one of you jackasses. And I actually ran for county commissioner at that time because I was so frustrated with the zoning regulations. And this is in the middle of COVID. I mean, we couldn't go out there and campaign. We couldn't go door knocking. We couldn't do any of the things you would normally do on that type of election. And I was going against a guy who'd been in there for like 20 years. He's from Fertile. He's well known. It was really a David versus Goliath type situation, and I was okay with that. I tried my best, but at the same time, I didn't really expect a lot. But we still took a third of the vote, and everybody kind of looked at me like, "Wait a minute, you were against Jerry, 20-year incumbent, and you couldn't campaign, and you still took over 30%." It's like, damn, dude, that's good for first time running without any experience. That was, and I thought that was kind of cool. But this was but still, again, at that point, I think, you know what, it was a nice experience, but I think I'm kind of done. And then I went back and thought about some things that happened last year at the nominating convention, the GOP in CD7, where there was a lot of irregularities, should I say. And I just found it very bothersome that the party here who is screaming about election integrity basically would stack the decks in their own convention against one candidate and for the other, not follow their own constitutions. And as I mentioned earlier, character matters. And I saw so much lack of character, so much rot within the GOP. And then on the Democratic side, I mean, they have just gone so far to the left. But both sides are zero sum. I can't win, you can't win, or you can't win and I can't lose, or I mean, it's just it bothered me. I mean, there's so much of, I see it even today. It's so much hatred on both sides of not letting the other side win. I mean, I look at an issue like election integrity. This is something, you know what? I mean, whether there was there was issues on last election or not, election integrity needs to be addressed because half your population has lost faith in the electoral system. So whether there was issues or not, it still needs to be addressed. The main thing the left keeps on, or the right keeps on pushing, is voter ID. Well, the left keeps on saying, well, no, we can't do that because that will disenfranchise all these poor voters. At which point I come back and say, okay, you know what? Election integrity is important to this country. It's going to have to be addressed. Let's come up with a solution that ensures that those poor voters or those poor voters in a bad area have the resources they need to get an ID. Let's make IDs required, but at the same time ensure that everybody can get one. And you look at it and say, okay, this is a situation here. If y'all wanted a solution, y'all could make a solution. Look at all the money y'all blow on everything else. If you had to put a few million or even $1 billion aside to help poor people get real IDs, y'all can make that happen. But neither side wants to make it happen. Why? Because it's a campaign thing they can use every year. All the Democrats are trying to block voter security. And the Democrats come back and go, oh, the Republicans are trying to disenfranchise all our base. If y'all wanted a solution, y'all would have one. But y'all refuse to do it. Why? Because you use it as a voting issue. this for a year now. I mean, we're getting more and more popular, but we've been completely ignored by any real mainstream media. I mean, our social media is up there, 50 to 60% of what Michelle Fishbox is right now. Everywhere I go in town or around here, everybody knows me, know I'm running for office, but we can't get any attention from the media. Where on the flip side, whenever a Democratic candidate would announce, they were all covering it, and then when they would drop out, that was always big news. But the fact that we're coming in from outside the system is completely ignored, and it's frustrating. I mean, because we are creating, with this campaign, we're going to be creating a major national, international story next year when we actually upset a Republican in a state that's R plus 20. It's going to downright embarrass the Republican Party, the fact that they lose such a red state to an independent. And again, we've got this momentum going. We've got people believing in us, but the media doesn't. And when you can't get out to the masses, I mean, that makes it a lot harder. I mean, I've got 42,000 square miles in this district. I can't shake everybody's hand. There's 700,000 people. We can only do so much compared to if we were in the city where I got a buddy of mine, Larry Sharp. Larry Sharp's running for governor in New York State. Great guy. I think he's going to do very well. But I was on a podcast with him, and I told him how many people and how big our district was. He's like, dude, that covers 6 blocks here. 6 blocks will cover basically your 42,000 miles as far as your people are concerned. And it just boggled his mind, because for him to advertise, he could very tightly advertise if he was running for Congress. Whereas me, I'd have to deal with 10 or 15 different radio stations or TV stations just to cover it. I think what I would like people to realize with me is my biggest strength is I'm a big picture kind of guy. I look at things more on a strategic, long range idea rather than the short range, tactical, right now, right in front of me situation. I always try to take a step back and look at the big picture. I mean, and that's what helps me drive to make this decision. I mean, I was frustrated at the fact that I'm raising cattle, and if I have a buddy of mine comes up and say, Travis, hey, I know you don't get USDA inspected, and I'm okay with that. I'd like you to sell me 50 pounds of ground meat, of hamburger. And I have to look at the guy and say, no, I can't. It's illegal. And they're like, hey, wait a minute. I mean, I know what I'm buying. Why is anybody involved in saying we can't do this? And that really frustrates me. I mean, as a small producer, those are the kind of things we need to be able to do to stay in business, to stay doing what we're doing. And what we're doing provides food security. It helps to get by those issues when you had a packing plant have to close for a week because of COVID. Well, there is another source. It doesn't shut off the valve completely. But everything has just gotten so corporatized, with the lobbyists basically helping the regulators and Congress write laws that only the corporations can meet in order to reduce their competition. That was another driving factor. There was just so many factors that drove me to do this. I mean, there's just, from what I experienced, stuff like that. And you have some people in Congress trying to fix those situations. Thomas Massey's been trying to push the Prime Act, which basically would take it out of the federal government's hand and put it into the states to decide how they want to regulate this. But he needs help. Because again, the establishment's not really for that. Tom Massey, guess what? He raises cattle, so he's got a personal stake in this, and I understand. I mean, I'm the same way. I mean, we are such a agricultural rich area in western Minnesota, but we're being held back by BS rules and regulations that don't really accomplish a whole lot. I mean, we have, our growing season is short, but I mean, the ground is so good and so fertile. I mean, we do great up here as far as being able to work in such a short growing period. The whole Midwest, I mean, and people just don't understand that Minnesota, Wisconsin, I mean, these northern states, they do grow a lot of the wheat, a lot of the corn. Our environment is almost ideal for hemp if we can ever get through all the regulatory guidances that are preventing us from capitalizing on that crop, which hopefully that's one of our big things we want to push, because we do feel that we do need to start moving away from corn. Ethanol demand is going to go down because of the people moving to electric vehicles, and we need to have a crop to replace it with. We can't just switch to other crops we're already planting, because then the supply and demand, they'll throw the supply and demand off of those crops, prices will bottom out, and we're going to lose farmers. I mean, we're already losing farmers at a high pace. Biden administration, with their actions on eliminating the step-up process now, is also going to drive farmers out. And what that does basically is, when a farmer dies, with the step-up exclusion canceled, you immediately have to pay property gains on that property from when they acquired it to when they pass away. When land values go up quickly, I mean, you have farmers who are going to have to sell up to 1/3 of their acres just to pay the tax bill for the capital gains. And then if that capital gains amount is high enough, it'll kick them into that bracket for inheritance tax. Corporate farms aren't, I mean, corporations remain alive. They don't ever have that situation where they have to pay the capital gains until they sell the land. So if you're a farming corporation and you're in business for 100 years, you don't pay capital gains until 100 years. And by that time, you're probably getting out of it because you have no money left anyway. And but the small farmers, that's the one that it's gonna really hit. I mean, and it's frustrating because, to me, part of what makes America great are our small businesses, our small farms. And that's what's getting squeezed out by the establishment politicians. You have corporate lobbyists who are out there helping to write the bills that are written in such a way that the corporations can survive, corporations can work with it, but the small businesses can't. And as those small businesses fail, the corporations pick them up. One of the things I keep hearing every time I go out and talk to people, they're sick and tired of corporate welfare. They're sick and tired of too big to fail. And I'll give you another example, that just recently the FDA came out with a plan to help reimburse people who during COVID couldn't sell, had to sell their pork and all that at a discount because the packing plants closed. Well, what happened is they basically made it where these commercial farms sold their pork out, their pigs out real cheap, so the small farmers couldn't compete against those prices. Then those pigs that they threw in the market went into the butcher shops we normally use, and when we used to have a 45 to 60 day wait for a butcher slot, now it went up to over a year. We couldn't move our product. Now, the corporations who sold their product at a lower price during that time period, the government's now paying them an extra $50 a head for every pig that they sold there, where the small providers, we got squeezed out because we couldn't even get a butcher date to sell our animals, because there are so many of them from the commercial farms just thrown on the market. And that's what frustrates a lot of us. Part of the big reason, though, is just I'm sick and tired of what they're doing to the country. I'm sick and tired of the two-party system playing tug-of-war and the American people being stuck in the middle. And everything with them is a binary solution. If we win, you lose, and if you lose, we win. So they'll never do anything to better the American people, because if the other party's in charge of Congress, it looks like it's a win for them. Or if the other party's in charge of the White House, well, we can't let that happen because we want him to lose so that we can beat him next election. So and that's part of the reason I ran as an independent, because I want to go in there and say, you know what, my loyalty is to the people, to the American people, to the people of Western Minnesota, not to a party. I mean, I'm one of the things that scares them most. Somebody who goes in there without an agenda, who's going there. I mean, I served my country for 20 years in the Army, And up to the point now, okay, you know what, I got to serve a little longer. I plan on retiring this far. This is what I wanted to do for my retirement. And right now I feel like I have to go in there and run for office, run for Congress, because if we don't get in there now to fix something, it's going to be too late. So we're stuck with the old saying that if not me, who? If not now, when? The right wants a secure border. The left wants more immigration, more freedom of people to immigrate to the United States. These are not mutually exclusive. Secure the border, go to an Ellis Island type system where you at least do some kind of a background check on everybody coming in, but we don't restrict ourselves so much, because look, we have a labor problem in this country right now. I mean, everybody says, well, people don't want to work for this money. Well, it's not that. It's just that now there's a shortage of workers, and that's how supply and demand works. I hate to tell you, I mean, there's a shortage of labor. There's a higher demand for help. That's driving up your salaries, and that's going to drive up your cost of your production of what you're buying. And but again, these aren't mutually exclusive. But they make them mutually exclusive. There aren't, well, no, we can't build a wall, it won't work. And of course, the Republicans are just like, well, no, you have to have a secure border. That's what a country is. I mean, and but again, these aren't mutually exclusive. You can shut down the border. You can provide better security. But we do need a streamlined situation for people to come in the country legally and go to work. America was built, I mean, off of hope, of the ability to come here, get a fresh start, and make something of yourself. The fact that we're closing off those walls, I think, just is going to make our country poorer. I mean, we have to let fresh blood in. We have to let fresh ideas in. Yes, we do need to do it securely, so we are not letting terrorists in and so forth. But there's ways to do that. And the thing is, everybody's like, well, we want to let the specialists in, the bioengineers, the software developers. Well, the thing is, we also need laborers. You can't just say, we just want your best and your brightest, and the manual labor guys y'all need to keep. No, because guess what? We need those. I mean, unfortunately, America's a country full of spoiled people. There are some jobs that Americans just don't want to do. But somebody who's coming in here with nothing, who knows they need to start at the bottom and work their way up, they're willing to do these jobs. And for us to say no to that resource, we're handicapping ourselves. We're tying our own feet together. And we will fall over if we don't solve that, if we don't come up with a solution. On a podcast I was with the other night, we were talking about compromise, because that's what a lot of people says. They don't want to compromise to meet the other side halfway. And the thing is, I don't think it's as much of compromising as again, finding ways we can trade off something that's important to you but not so important to me, and vice versa. So we're both getting something that's high on our principle list that doesn't necessarily hurt the other side. And again, some of the examples we just used were that. You give people election security at the same time with IDs, and at the same time you don't disenfranchise people. There's no compromise there. Both sides are getting what they want. Same with the border. I mean, if you let more people in legally, then guess what? If you're filling your roles, your jobs, with people who come in here legally, then the people who came here illegally have no reason to stay, because the jobs are going to be filled with people who can do it legally. And there's just, if they know there's a legal way to do it, they won't be enticed to do it illegally. They can see the path. I mean, a lot of people do stuff that's illegal and wrong because they don't see another path. They don't see another way. If they had another way, I think you would see the illegal border crossings, go down drastically. I mean, because right now they just don't have any hope. They don't have a hope of getting there, and I mean, they have no hope at their home countries. That's what drove them off. They're not necessarily coming to the United States to to make United States another Honduras or Guatemala. I mean, that's what they left. They don't want that. Okay, they want the shining hill, the shining building on top of the hill. They want everything that America seems to symbolize. I mean, and the only time this turns negative is when we force them. We don't give them an option. And there's all kind of things like that. I mean, you don't have to compromise your principles to move things forward. One of my big things I tell people all the time is, how are you going to solve a problem? I mean, I was telling them, you solve a problem usually by fixing another problem. If you look hard enough, you usually find two problems that can actually cancel each other out. Okay, I mean the immigration issue and lack of labor. Okay, these are things that can cancel each other out. I mean, election security and people feeling like they're disenfranchised. Okay, you know what? We can ensure that you are franchised, that you do have that ability to vote, and both sides in say with the election integrity fail to look for solutions. Again, I don't really think they want solutions. They want something to campaign on. I look at Congress and I see a bunch of people who's not grounded. Is that what's best for us? To have people in there who really don't have a sense of reality of what happens to the average American. And again, I don't think they do. I mean, if they did when they got into office, probably after 5 or 6 years they lost that. That's why I'm a huge supporter of term limits. After 5 or 6 years, 3 terms, get your ass home. Because by that time you will have spent enough time up there that you start turning native. And we need to prevent as many politicians from turning native as possible. There's a reason why Washington, D.C. was never made a state. Because it wasn't meant for people to be there and live there. It was meant to be a seat of government. Come here, do your stuff, go home. Not turn into what it has today. And I'm hoping that the people of Western Minnesota will do that for me, will give me that opportunity. There's probably one of my favorite songs. It's definitely a top 10. Toby Keith has a song called American Soldier. And when I was in that, I mean, that song always rang true to me, always struck a chord. On one of my deployments, I actually got with a buddy of mine who I was arranging with him to, if something were to happen to me, and it came he was the one to handle my final arrangements, because I didn't want my family or my wife to have to deal with that if something had happened to me. And that was actually one of the last song I wanted playing at my funeral, let everybody know, you know what, if I didn't make it back, but I'm content with that, because that's what we go to do. But I heard that on the way back from a campaign event the other day, and as I'm listening to it, I mean, as they talking about, he's just trying to raise a family, be a father to his kids and his husband to the wife, and I'm like, that hasn't changed. I mean, I'm still trying to be everything for my family in a real challenging time. I'm trying to help everybody I can. Now, granted, now when I get up early before dawn, it's not combat boots I'm putting on, but I'm putting on a different set of boots for the task at hand now. I'm no longer asked to die for my country, but I think it scares me less to die for my country than it does to actually put myself out in the open running for public office. And as we go there, it's like, you know what? I am still I'm an American. I'm still an American soldier, but I'm just fighting a different battle now. And I'm okay with that. I mean, it's a song that really struck home with me. And the more I listen to it, the more it's like, you know what, I'm not wearing a uniform anymore, but damn it, not a thing has freaking changed from when I was on duty hearing that song. And that's one of the things I like people to know or to realize about me. That's the kind of person I want to be.